Welcome to the Crawlcast. I'm your host, George Krosek, and today we are looking at how many roster spots are available on the Green Bay Packers. And what I mean by that is this is being recorded before their final preseason game, and I want to know how many spots are available. Like who is trying to earn a roster spot? Because there's can only be so many spots for so many players, and it will be cut down to a 53-man team. So this is being filmed again, like I said, before their final preseason game, and this video does not include any trades or anything like that. So we'll see how many positions are available. And if you like this type of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button like it owes you money. And if you want my more immediate thoughts on things, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Crawcast. Now let's get started. So the first position is quarterback. So I have highlighted the players that are guaranteed to get a roster spot, and I kind of played it safe on most of these where it's like if someone's kind of on the fence where I'm like 90% sure they're going to get a roster spot, I kept them off because these are pretty much guaranteed roster spot players. So at quarterback, you have Jordan Love and Malik Willis, who are guaranteed to make the team. Jordan Love, obviously, face of the franchise, gave him a huge contract. He's guaranteed to make the team, quarterback of the future. And then Malik Willis, I think he's guaranteed to make the team no matter what because of last season. Last year, he played really well in stepping in for Jordan Love when Jordan got injured, and I think he's built up enough goodwill with the coaching staff that he's guaranteed to make the team. So then you have Tyler Algersma and then Sean Clifford. So those two are interesting because every team does get a third emergency quarterback, and so those two are fighting it out for that position. Sean Clifford was the emergency quarterback last year and presumably does know the offense, but he did look really bad in preseason a couple of years ago. And Tyler, he's looked fairly decent, so I think it could be a 50-50 shot. I'd give it to Tyler if you want me to bet money on it, but it can go either way. So, again, quarterback, Jordan Love and Malik Willis are the two that are guaranteed to make the team. So now we're on to running back. So the two players that are guaranteed to make the team are Josh Jacobs and Marshawn Lloyd. So Josh Jacobs, obviously really great last year. I think it's going to be a focal point of the offense because Matt LaFleur loves kind of running the ball and using play action to set up the pass. Really great last year, gave him a big contract, so Josh Jacobs for sure making the team. Marshawn Lloyd, he was a third-round pick a year ago, guaranteed to make the team. Because I have a general rule, especially with more recent picks, if you're like a fifth round pick and before, you're probably making the team. And then sixth and seventh round picks, they basically have to fight it out and earn their spot. So those two are guaranteed. Unfortunately, Marshawn Lloyd is very unavailable and is constantly injured, so hopefully he can sort that out. And I think the Packers will probably keep two more running backs. And so you have Chris Brooks, Emmanuel Wilson, Israel Abikanda, Amar Johnson, and Tyler Davis Price. So you have Chris Brooks, who's really good in pass protection and a pretty good receiving back. Emmanuel Wilson, I think, is probably the best running back of the ones remaining. I think he is a really good, like I said, just pure running back, even though he is not very good receiving back. Israel, I'll just call him that because his last name is very hard. I think he's a fine receiving back, and he is really good on punt and kick return duties, and the Packers really need that because special teams is something they've struggled with a lot, so I think he can make a case. And then Mar Johnson has played really well in preseason so far, so I think he's made a case to potentially take a roster spot. I can kind of see a two of any of these guys make it, and I think they especially need to because of Marshawn Lloyd being so unhealthy and being so unreliable when it comes to staying healthy and being able to play. So next you have wide receiver. So the guys that are guaranteed to make the team are Jaden Reed, obviously second round pick a couple years ago. He's been their top receiver past 2 years. Romeo Doubs, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm not convinced that Romeo Doubs may or may not get traded, but this is again before trades. But he has been a solid receiver. Yes, struggles with drops occasionally, but it probably has the most consistent hands of any receiver on the team. Matthew Golden, first round pick, guaranteed to make the team. Dontavian Wicks was a fourth round pick and has shown flashes, so he's guaranteed to make the team. And then Christian Watson. So this is kind of the final 53 that I'm going with, meaning that Christian Watson's going to start the year on the PUP list. So he might not be available for, let's just say, like week 6. But once he gets activated, again, I'm just throwing out a week there, week 6, then he will need a roster spot. So that is why I'm including him on this list, because he will need a roster spot eventually, even though he will not take up a roster spot immediately. And then Savion Williams, third round pick, guaranteed to make the team. So then I think you kind of have your wide receiver set. You might want to add one more because of Christian Watson, but I think you'd be comfortable enough with 5 unless they keep getting injured, because right now Dobbs, Jayden Reed, Savion Williams, Christian Watson, and Dontavian Wicks are all injured. So that is a slight problem, but hopefully they'll be ready by week 1. So Mecole Hardman, he's looked really great in camp, but he did look terrible in the first preseason game. Malik Heath struggled with drops, but does know the offense, did make the team last year, and has been decent in games. And then Julian Hicks, Cornelius Johnson, and Isaiah Naylor have all had their moments in camp and their moments in preseason. So they potentially could make an argument, but if you want me to bet money on it, I assume they're just going to keep these 6/5 because Christian Watson's not going to start the season on the team. And I think they'll just kind of leave it at that unless injuries start piling up. But you also get 3 practice squad call-ups, so they might just sign a couple of receivers, a couple of these guys to the practice squad and hope they can fill in well there. Next position is tight end. You have Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. Those are the 2 that are guaranteed to make the team. Obviously, Tucker Kraft, 3rd round pick. Luke Musgrave, 2nd round pick. Both really solid, even though Luke Musgrave has been injured. Tucker Kraft, I think, has potential to be one of the top tight ends in the NFL. This is the one I was really on the fence about. John Fitzpatrick, I would be really, really surprised if he doesn't make the team. I think he's looked very solid in camp, and I think he's earned his spot on the team. And then Ben Sims has had decent moments, and Messiah Swinson has had decent moments, but overall, I think it'll probably be Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave, and John Fitzpatrick. Maybe they get a 4th one in there, but I think it'll probably be just those 3. That'd be my guess. The next position is center. So kind of the offensive line positions, I'd say just ignore the position because we don't really, because the Green Bay Packers love versatile offensive linemen, so we don't really know who's going to be in what position. And what I mean by that is like Elgton Jenkins, he's clearly their starting center. Let's say he gets injured. Well, like right guard, Sean Ryan could be their backup center, or something, someone else could be it. So it's not necessarily like a 1-to-1 position ratio. And so Elgton Jenkins guaranteed to make the team. He's on a decent sized contract, still really good. And then Jacob Monk, that's another one where I really struggled with. He's not had the greatest of camp, and he has not looked great in preseason. He was a 5th round pick, and it's just tough because clearly that last year he didn't see the field and they didn't trust him. So there's a little bit of, I don't want to say animosity, but a little bit of distrust where they don't see him potentially as that guy who can play in the NFL. So I did leave him off because, like I said, I'm sticking with guys who are guaranteed to make the team. So I do see a world where he potentially gets cut, but I think he's like as close to getting there in terms of being guaranteed to make the team as possible. And then you have Trey Hill, who does have starting NFL experience, but overall, I don't know how much he can make the team. And then at your guards, you have Aaron Banks and Sean Ryan, who are guaranteed to make the team. Sean Ryan was a former 3rd round pick, and then Aaron Banks, they signed him to a huge contract, so those 2 are locked in. And that's kind of what I meant by position when I was talking about earlier, where for example, let's say Aaron Banks gets injured. Well, Jordan Morgan, he's fighting for that left tackle spot, but let's say Rasheed Walker wins that. Well, then left tackle Jordan Morgan's first guy up at left guard. And stuff like that where, you know, the Packers like where any offensive lineman can play any position on the offensive line, where you're not necessarily locked into like right tackle or right guard or center. So that's why it's a little bit frustrating when you say like, oh, look they have this many guards or this many centers. Well, yes, someone might be like a guard in the name of their position, but as soon as someone goes down, they might be able to fill in at center or fill in tackle. So these other guys, Tyler Cooper, I was pretty high on him. I like him, but he has not looked that great. Same with Donovan Jennings, he's looked okay. And then J.J. Lipp and Letitia Smith. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say his name. Neither of those guys really are going to have much of a shot at all to make the team. Now at offensive tackle, you have Zach Tom, gave huge money contract to him. He's guaranteed to make it. Rasheed Walker, he's guaranteed to make the team. But I can see potentially a world where if Jordan Morgan does beat him out for a spot, which I don't necessarily think will happen, although anything can happen, he could potentially be traded because he is a starting caliber left tackle. And I think a lot of teams would be interested in it. Or the Packers might just be interested in having him as a backup if Jordan Morgan beats him out for that spot. Because, as soon as if Jordan Morgan gets injured, he's a starting caliber player. So always good to have him as a backup. And then Jordan Morgan, former first round pick, obviously to make the team. And then Anthony Belton, was a second round pick in this year's draft, guaranteed to make the team. John Williams, 7th round pick. I really like him. I think he has a decent shot. And then Kadeem Telfort has good size. The Packers like him, but anytime he's gotten on the field and had opportunities to play, he's just looked terrible. So I don't necessarily know exactly how the likelihood is of him making the team. And then Brent Branks, I just don't think he has much of a shot at all. And then at defensive end, we have Rashawn Gary, who got a huge contract, former first-round pick, is probably is their best pass rusher, guaranteed to make the team. Lucas Van Ness, he was former first-round pick, really hasn't shown a lot of development yet, but we're hoping that he can be a solid edge rusher and really improve this year. He's guaranteed to make the team. Kingsley Enagbare, he's looked pretty decent, and I think he's one of the best backup pass rushers when he started games, guaranteed to make the team. Colin Oliver was a 5th-round pick, I believe, so he's guaranteed to make the team. And Baron Sorrell was a 4th-round pick, so he's guaranteed to make the team as well. Carl Brooks, I'd be really surprised if he doesn't make it. Again, there's the guys where it's like I'm like 80% sure they're going to make the team, and I think Carl Brooks has a really good shot. And then Brenton Cox, I really like him. I don't know if he's going to make the team or not, or if he's going to be a practice squad player. And then also Aaron Mosby, I like him, but I think he has a shot, but it's unlikely at this point of him making the team. I think Carl Brooks, I nearly put him as the guaranteed, but it's like I can see a world where he gets cut. I just think it's very, very unlikely. And then Deslin Alexandre, I just don't see him making the team at all whatsoever. So at defensive tackle, we have Kenny Clark, former first-round pick. They just gave a big contract to. He's guaranteed to make the team. And then Devonte Wyatt, also former first-round pick. They picked up this 5th-year option. He's guaranteed to make the team as well. And Colby Wooden, I'd be really surprised if he doesn't make it. He's been fairly solid, and I think he is almost guaranteed to make the team. Like, I almost put him in my guarantees, but I think it's like a 99% chance, but not 100%. And then Nazir Stackhouse, I've been on the fence about him because I didn't necessarily, I don't think his spot is guaranteed, but he has looked very, very solid in camp, and I think he's potentially earned his way on, especially with such a weak, defensive tackle group here, that he's definitely has a good shot in terms of how weak the Packers' defensive tackle group is. Warren Brinson, haven't seen anything out of him, although he was an actual draft pick. James Esther doesn't have a shot, and then Devontae O'Malley doesn't have a shot at making the team as well. And just because a guy doesn't make the team doesn't mean they can't make the practice squad and be a practice squad call-up, but I'm talking about, day one being on the actual roster, the shot at making that. Oh, yeah, the next group is linebackers. You have Edgerrin Cooper, who is former second-round pick. He's guaranteed to make the team. Absolute stud. I have really high hopes for him because even though he only played a limited number of games last year and a limited number of snaps, he looked fantastic, and I'm really, really high on him. Quay Walker, former first-round pick, guaranteed to make the team. He's going to be the other starting linebacker. Isaiah McDuffie, they just gave him a decent-sized contract, so he's guaranteed to make the team. And Tyrone Hopper was a former third-round pick, so he's also guaranteed to make the team. So these other ones are kind of interesting. So Isaiah Simmons, the thing about him is he was the 8th overall pick in the NFL draft. So he does have 8th overall pick potential. So he will almost always be have a spot in the league because of his athleticism, because of his potential. But at what point do you say, okay, he has not lived up to his potential, and he probably doesn't deserve to make the team because he has looked really bad so far. Kind of way to put it is in training camp, he hasn't looked that great. In preseason, he's looked abysmal, but it's always eighth overall potential. Like, there's certain guys that like that. For example, Zach Wilson. He'll almost always make a team because he was a second overall pick and he has second overall potential, even though he's looked not very good in his NFL career yet. And then Christian Welch is the one that's interesting to me because he's looked fairly decent in camp. Last year he was like one of my preseason MVPs. I thought he looked amazing last year in preseason, and I was kind of surprised he didn't make the team last year. So it's going to be a tough battle for both of them, but I think both of them do have a shot. Jared Bartlett, I don't think has much of a chance at making it, and then Jermaine Johnson, I don't think has any shot really at all making it. So the next group is cornerbacks. So you have Keyshawn Nixon. The Packers gave him a huge contract a year ago, so he's guaranteed to make the team. Nate Hobbs they gave him a huge contract. He's guaranteed to make the team. And Carrington Valentine has been a solid starter and a former seventh round pick, so he's guaranteed to make the team. This one's a very interesting one because I can see almost any combination of these guys making the team. I see them keeping five, so there is two spots available. So they have Bo Melton. So he just made his transition from wide receiver to cornerback, and he's looked fairly decent in his very young cornerback career. He'd looked decent in preseason, he's looked decent in camp, and I think he's almost guaranteed a roster spot because he is so early and so inexperienced, and he's looked fairly decent because he is insanely athletic. That to me proves okay, he's only going to get better from here, so he's almost earned a roster spot. And then Kalen King, former seventh round pick. Micah Robinson, current seventh round pick. And then Corey Ballantyne is an interesting one because although he did get cut by the Colts earlier in training camp this year, he does have starting NFL experience. He is very good on special teams. And I think he's not great, but he's solid. And I think he can fill in for a cornerback role for you. So I think Corey Ballantyne is almost guaranteed to make the team. Like, if you want me to guess, I'd say Bo Melton and Corey Ballantyne are probably the two corners that have the best shot at making it. And then you have Kamal Haddon, who has NFL experience. And then Jonathan Baldwin and Tyron Herring, I don't think have any shot at making it. So, although, like I said, Kalen King and Micah Robinson could surprise you, especially Micah Robinson, I think does also have a shot. If you want me to rank him, because Micah Robinson is younger than Corey Ballantyne, so I think the Packers would probably prefer him to make it over Corey Ballantyne. I'm just talking about experience and what I've seen on the field, and I think Corey Ballantyne is, even though he's not going to be the best out of this group, he's definitely not going to be the worst, and he's just going to give you solid play. So the next group is the safety group. Xavier McKinney, guaranteed to make the team. They gave him a huge contract. It was an all-pro. Very great. Evan Williams looked really good last year. And Javon Bullard also looked pretty good last year. So this one is going to be an interesting one because I think almost all these guys have a case to make the team. Zane Anderson, he was on the defense last year, and he filled in for one game where I believe Xavier McKinney got injured, and Javon Bullard also got injured. Actually, no, it was Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams both got injured, and he looked solid in that one game. Yes, it was against the Saints, so I don't know how much stock you want to put in that one because it was against Spencer Rattler, but he does deserve credit for looking good and starting a game. And then Katana Oladapo, he was a former fifth round pick for the Packers, so that does give him a little bit of credit there. And then Omar Brown has looked really good in preseason and really good in training camp. I think he's at least earned a practice squad spot if he doesn't make the team. And then Jalen Simpson, he has no shot at making the team at all. And to round out the roster, we have our special teams players. Brandon McManus, really, really great kicker, and it's actually kind of surprising after who would have thought after giving Josh Jacobs a huge contract and Xavier McKinney a huge contract, the best free agent signing of last year for the Packers was Brandon McManus, the kicker, because it is so unbelievable how terrible the Packers kickers were with Ander Carlson and Braden Neverson. They were absolutely terrible, and they are costing the Packers almost every game that had several missed field goals, and that could have made the difference between winning and losing. So Brandon McManus, super happy to have him. And like I said, Alf, who's the most replaceable out of, or who's the least replaceable out of Xavier McKinney, Josh Jacobs, and Brandon McManus? It's probably Brandon McManus. So he's obviously guaranteed to make the team. Daniel Whelan, really solid punter, guaranteed to make the team. Matt Elwerzek, I apologize. I'm not super familiar with long snapper positions or long snapper tape, but he seems like a solid long snapper. Haven't noticed too many bad snaps for him. And either way, the long snapper position is going to be filled by someone. And then you have Mark McNamee, who is a part of the International Pathway Program. So even if he kind of like quote unquote makes the team, he won't be counted as a roster spot. But I don't really see a reason for him making the team, even as their International Pathway Program player, because he's just there to help, have another kicker in camp, because you don't want to wear out Brandon McManus of having him kick so many times a day. And again, you have McManus, so there's no point of having Mark McNamee in the regular season if indeed that's what the Packers want to do. It just makes no sense. So overall, you have 39 guarantees, and so that's 14 spots available for the rest of these guys going for them. And that's going to be a tough spot for a lot of them. So the Green Bay Packers have 14 roster spots to play with, and all these players are trying to make the team, and there's only 14 roster spots for the ones that aren't guaranteed. And keep in mind, this is before anyone else gets cut. This is before anyone gets traded. So there will be, some players who aren't on the team that will get signed by the Packers, and some players that will get traded. Keep in mind, Malik Willis, they traded for him after the Titans were probably going to cut him. So we don't know how this is going to go. And also, keep in mind, there's still Micah Parsons and other players that the Packers might get. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below on what players do you want to make the team, what players do you think shouldn't make the team. And if you like this type of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button like it owes you money. And if you want to know my more immediate thoughts on things, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Crawcast, and I'll see you on the next one.